It's not often the case, no pun intended, that case diameter alone will tell the whole story about how a watch will wear on one's wrist. Today, we're looking at a roundup of our favorite small-size watches for men that all around maintain a set of compact dimensions for smaller wrists, or those just in search of a watch with some retro flair. The name of the game is all about proportions, as cases are three-dimensional objects at the end of the day with vertical measurements and thicknesses or heights that also need to be accounted for when making your next purchasing decision. In this curated high and low hands-on buyer's guide, we've selected a class of top-tier watches, our favorites, ones that would be considered small in size for the modern man. To outline our aim, right from the get-go, we set up the following parameters. First, a case diameter no larger than 40mm, but we really aimed for well below that, trying our best to stick to picks that maxed out around 37 to 38. A lug-to-lug, or vertical dimension, well below 50mm. As you'll see, a lot of our top picks will hover somewhere around the mid-40s or below. And third, while we did account for thickness or height somewhat, and we tried our best to stay at or below 12mm, it wasn't at the forefront of our decision making. So the following picks will vary pretty widely, as this is arguably the least important proportion to consider when finding a small-sized watch. And fourth, for context, our wearer for the entire video does maintain a larger than average wrist size just below 8 inches, so some of the watches may wear smaller on his wrist in this video than the average wearer, or someone with a small wrist size. Anyway, showcasing 2 pint-sized watches for each category spanning pilot watches, divers, field watches, dress watches, and more, we'll offer a budget pick and a premium pick to give you a few options for each. We think that about sums it up, so without anything further, let's take a look at our first 2 small-size watch picks, 2 excellent divers, the first of which is the highly affordable Seiko SRPK29. We think that just about sums it up, so without anything further, let's take a look at our first 2 small-size dive watch picks, the first of which is the highly affordable Seiko SRPK29. The chunky Seiko SKX series is a time-tested Seiko staple, but their proportions aren't necessarily the most wearable for smaller wrists, with diameters well above 40mm. But there does exist one SKX 5 series called the SRPK29 that sizes all the way down to 38mm, with a highly compact 44mm lug-to-lug. And this might actually be a great spot to talk about how we approached our picks more specifically, as case diameter alone never tells the full story about how a watch will wear on your wrist. And if you're already caught up about lug-to-lug or case thickness, in other words the watch's overall proportions, feel free to skip ahead about 30 seconds or so. In layman's, the lug-to-lug is the vertical length of the case from the tip of each lug, and case thickness is pretty self-explanatory, generally speaking. Lug-to-lug is equally if not more important to consider when assessing how a watch will wear on your wrist. Take for example, a watch with a smaller diameter with a long length across the wrist. Yes, the diameter can be considered small, but the sprawling vertical length can make the wearing experience seem massive. The 39mm IWC Spitfire is actually a solid example. Not necessarily a large diameter for a pilot watch, but its lug-to-lug pushes 50mm, and it makes it seem as though the diameter is much larger than it actually is on paper. Again, it's all about proportions. The SRPK29 carries over a typically classic Seiko 5 sports dial under the hardlex, with bright, bubbly LumaBrite hands and markers, a clean day date at the 3, and simple script text above the 6. The automatic 4R36 provides a 3Hz beat rate and a power reserve of about 40 hours on a full wind. Seiko also gives you a view of this through the case back. For a watch of its size and a modest price point, the metal bracelet uses thick links and feels solid on the wrist with push pins and a fold-over push-button clasp that builds in a total of 2 micro-adjustments. Our high pick or premium size small diver goes to the new Zenith Defy Revival. This 37mm butte launched to acclaim at this year's Watches and Wonders as an extremely faithful yet unexpected execution of Zenith's very first Defy model, first brought to market in 1969. The highly faceted 37mm case and approximate 44mm lug-to-lug will please quite a few folks with smaller wrist sizes, and it just comes absolutely packed with style, dimensions aside. A timing bezel with a stunningly bright orange sapphire insert sits atop the highly polished and partially brushed angular case that also builds in an offset screw-down crown and a date window at the fore. As style-heavy as it is, the case comes with some serious utility. 600 meters of water resistance. It is a diver at the end of the day, but it's cool to see that Zenith didn't just reissue this design for show only. Under a box sapphire, the retro dial is just as bright as the bezel, with an orange band under the white markers, a central black background, orange framing for the handset, and bright C1 Superluminova for the rest of the white elements. Inside the Zenith Elite 670 automatic manufacture movement is a 4Hz Zenith powerhouse that offers about 50 hours of power when fully wound and shows skeleton by way of the see-through caseback. A 3-link stainless steel bracelet uses a mix of high polish and vertical brushing, like the main case, to keep the Revival firmly tethered to the wrist. Screw pins make sizing a breeze, and 5 micro adjustments with a fold-over clasp provide plenty of opportunity for refinement. Up next, we're going to examine a low and a high or budget and premium field watch, a sub-tier that doesn't historically have any issues staying compact. Timex has recently revamped their outdoor-oriented expedition line with a slew of new models in the past year or two, and one of the latest is a 36mm solar-powered field watch gem. The Expedition Northfield Solar 36mm is the smallest in the Timex Expedition line, solar or not, but it punches well above its weight class, size class, offering up a highly attractive traditional military-inspired design, with a lovely matte case finish that reminds us a lot of Hamilton's iconic khaki feel. It offers 100 meters of water-resistant utility, begging to be let outdoors courtesy of a screw-down crown and case back, and a solar-powered caliber well hidden beneath the textured matte black dial. 36mm across the wrist with a 44.5mm lug-to-lug and an 8mm thickness. Essentially, they've proportioned down the existing 41mm field post-solar to a more true-to-form field watch dimension. This is right around the size of the Dirty Dozen field watches issued to GI soldiers when they were actually worn as wartime tools, but obviously theirs did not come solar-powered like our modern Timex here. Beneath a sapphire crystal, yes sapphire, and beneath the very traditionally designed dial with its concentric 24-hour Arabic numerals, generous amounts of lume, and hints of red interest on the chapter ring, lies a solar-powered movement, but you would have a difficult time actually knowing if the dial didn't spell it out explicitly just below the handset. This particular Japanese solar quartz provides 4 months of power reserve, meaning you could fully charge the cell, stick the field watch in a drawer or case, and pick it right back up months later to see its hands still ticking away. Now, we haven't always been fans of Timex's bracelets or strap options. They're okay in relation to the price tags most of the time, but this one's well executed through and through for the most part, coming in a genuine eco-friendly leather, a nice dark finish on the exterior, red contrast stitching matching the subtle red details on the dial, and the highly convenient quick-release lug bars make switching out the 18mm default painless and toolless. We're not going to go too premium for our high field watch pick, but comparatively to the Expedition Northfield Solar, the Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical will run you about 4 times the price of the 36mm Timex. Plus, you can't get any more field watch than the Khaki Field, and our previous Timex pick reminded us a lot of this gem, so here we are. On the wrist, you're looking at 38mm in diameter and a 47mm lug-to-lug that wears fairly true to form, but its thickness, in this case or lack thereof, is just 9.5mm, and allows the Khaki Field to hug the wrist and to appear quite compact. 47mm lug-to-lug is more or less pushing the upper threshold, and somewhat small wrist widths might find it wears just a touch larger than expected. You'll have to try it out for yourself if you're interested, but for context, here's our wearer who has a large wrist dimension just shy of 8 inches. The plain black dial serves as a high contrast background for the white applied numerals set straight onto the dial itself. Not only does this provide great visibility via the value contrast, but without the use of highly raised numerals for each hour marker, the hour and minute hands can actually sit lower in the case under the sapphire, another area that's allowed for the watch's overall thin profile. Now, we've said this before about the Khaki Field, but for us the only thing that's slightly underwhelming is the lume, especially for a military-inspired utility-first watch. Hamilton uses the highest quality superluminova, but as you can see, it doesn't really use much of it. Only the inset hour and minute hands as well as each triangular hour marker along the minute track glow a neon green, and it doesn't hold its luminosity for very long, fading quicker than would be ideal for a toolish field watch. Diving into one of the key selling points of this watch is the H50 mechanical movement, a 17-jewel fully analog caliber modified by Hamilton based on the ETA 2801-2 for full self-winding capability. This fully mechanical caliber is another area that allows the Hamilton Khaki Field to stay quite thin. Boasting a whopping 80-hour power reserve on a full wind, or enough to sustain about 3 full days of use, this outwardly reserved 38mm field watch packs an impressive internal punch. Like the different case options, ours here in a PVD black with a dark gray NATO strap combo, the Khaki Field Mechanical also offers several other colors of 20mm NATOs that utilize leather strap loops and pin buckle hardware. And if you're not a fan of the textile look, you can pick up one of a dozen full-grain leather options that Hamilton provides first party, or you can offer something as non-conventional as a third-party rubber strap since the 20mm lug width makes finding alternates a breeze. Next up, pilot watches, and let's begin with our most affordable suggestion for a pint-sized frequent flyer. Lesser known than the Khaki Field, but equally relevant in our opinion, is the Hamilton Khaki Aviation Pilot Pioneer Mechanical, based on the tonneau-shaped 6BB RAF pilot watch Hamilton issued to the British Royal Air Force between 1973 and 1976, and it ships even smaller than its popular field sibling at just 36mm in diameter. The original design is just barely pre-Swatch era, and they were made in the US before the operation moved offshore to Switzerland. This particular dial version in white is one of our favorite military-inspired watches, size aside. Shipping with a lightweight and highly comfortable gray NATO, allowing your wrist to breathe, which is a great option for the summer months. This faithful resurrection is yet another home run for Hamilton, and fans of military-inspired watches. It has heaps of character with its brushed barrel-shaped case, its railroad-style dial track, and its beautifully textured background. And if you already thought the Hamilton Khaki Field's diameter was small at 38, you're in for a surprise with the Pilot Pioneer Mechanical. As we said, the case runs quite small at 36mm in diameter, up 1mm from the original's 35, with a short 42mm lug-to-lug and a stout 9.95mm height. The Pilot Pioneer Mechanical beefs up the Khaki Field's 50 meters of water resistance to now 100 meters. As per our previous editorial coverage, a watch with 100 meters of water resistance will certainly hold up to swimming and even free diving, but if you're going to be scuba diving, you'll need something with a higher rating of at least 200 meters to ensure its safety. Under a high-boxed and ever so slightly curved sapphire, the dial feels familiar, like the Khaki Field, with a railroad seconds track, straightforward applied Arabic numerals, and a set of arrow-shaped hands inlaid with superluminova that matches the indices. The mechanical H50 caliber keeps the Pilot Pioneer ticking, sticking to what they know, the same unit found in the Khaki Field Mechanical that supplies 80 hours of power and impressive accuracy for a sub-$1,000 price. I don't think anyone can argue with this, and we certainly won't as well. Note that the Pilot Pioneer does use an 18mm NATO, different from the Khaki Field's 20mm, but luckily there are an abundance of 18mm on the market, so if you do want to pair the case with another style, feel free. Okay, now for our small-sized premium pilot watch pick. If you're in the market for a compact pilot watch but have around $2,000 to spend, let's examine the Longines Spirit 37mm, the much requested follow-up to its larger sibling's release in 2022. Unlike a handful of our picks, the Longines Spirit aims to carry out exactly as its name suggests. It evokes, not reissues or revives, the spirit of its aviation heritage, but is a completely modern creation that builds upon the first, larger Spirit release circa 2020. The Spirit 37mm specifically is one of our favorite everyday wear watches. It has this refined, classy ruggedness that's hard to beat at this price. 37mm across the case, an approximate 44.8mm lug-to-lug, and right around 11.7mm thick, and it maintains 100 meters of water resistance. It's going to have near perfect proportions for most folks, and the 37 diameter maintains a nice compromise for anyone with larger wrist sizes, like our wearer here with a dimension just shy of 8 inches, who are worried in general about being able to pull off smaller watches. The case itself uses a beautiful cadence of high polish and brushing, part of the reason it feels modern. It's kind of like the IWC Mark series. It certainly evokes aviation horology of yesteryear, but it makes a clear point that it's a modern beast. Under the flat sapphire with applications of anti-reflective coating on both sides of the crystal, the clean black dial, white-framed raised Arabic numerals, diamond-shaped markers, signature 5-star emblem, a sharp handset with a sporty red tip seconds, a clean logo and logo type under the 12, and plenty of lume, all lend themselves to a handsome, simple, yet rugged air that has us drawn back in each and every time we take a glance at the wrist. The rivet-like screw-down caseback encloses within it the exclusive to Longines ETA manufacturer L888.4 automatic, also known as the A31.L11. It offers up a 3.5 Hz beat rate, a sizable power reserve of up to 72 hours when fully wound, and a monocrystalline silicone balance spring as well as Nevishock tech. The combination of brushing and high polish transitions from the case to the 3-link bracelet that we love builds in screw pins for easy adjustments, and it concludes with a simple Longines branded push-button clasp that houses 5 micro-adjustment slots. Moving on to our high-low selections of the best small-size sport or everyday watches. We'll begin with a sub-$500 micro-brand gem from one of our favorite watchmakers currently based in New York, New York. One of the 6 current watches that comprise Laurier's core collection, the Falcon Series 3 stands as one of the smallest, sharing a 36mm case size with the Astra, a similar, sporty, dressy, all-white sector dial that you should also consider if you're a fan of Art Deco cues. Laurier technically classifies the Falcon as a field watch, although its versatility is clearly evident. You could just as well say rugged dress watch with its smaller 36mm size. That certainly helps. You could also just as easily say vintage-inspired sports watch. The dark textured gray dial and brushed stainless steel build, in our eyes, definitely lends itself to everyday wear. You could easily pull off with a more casual fit. Back in the early 50s, Tudor launched their new creation, the Oyster Prince, as a rugged tool watch. It accompanied explorers to the Arctic and timed extreme 1,000-mile moto races like the Monaco International Trophy, but by all accounts, most would look at it today as a dressy watch. Laurier wants to revitalize the perception with their creations that tool watches can just as well take on more elegant forms. See, our favorite part about the Falcon, and what makes such a capable everyday wear piece, is the balance between style and utility. Yes, it's obviously vintage inspired, obviously extremely beautiful, but Laurier as a whole isn't satisfied with looks alone. The Falcon Series 3 has 100 meters of water resistance, a full 316L marine grade stainless steel case, an easily correctable domed Hesalite crystal above the dial, and bright BGW9 superluminova used to set the numerals and the markers and inset within all three of the hands. They've also backed it up with a cutting-edge, no-date Miyota Series 9 movement, the 90S5 automatic, which allows for a smooth second sweep by way of the 4Hz beat rate and allows the Falcon to stay quite thin at just 9mm without factoring in the domed crystal on the top. Truth be told, the bracelet is most often where we see sub-$500 watches, micro-brand or not, fall apart. Not the case at all with the Falcon Series 3, and we can report that's been the case with each and every Laurier we've reviewed. The passion that's quite clearly evidenced in the rest of the approach extends into the bracelet's design as well. The Turnian bracelet comes with a few upgrades from the Series 2 Falcon, like rounder, thinner links, and a few more fine chamfers on the edges. You also get screw pin links instead of push pins, and 3 micro adjustments on the clasp, making the resizing process a breeze. The watches that comprise the Nomos club line are all fun pieces, but if we could pick only one of the most unique, small-sized options that use color in one of the most original ways we've seen to date is the 36mm club reference 701.1. And yes, we're talking about that handset inlaid with vibrant red superluminova. What we like most about this is that you usually see color reserved for the seconds hand, even with Nomos, and even then it's usually colored framing of some sort. But colored lume is a whole other ballgame. What's even more fascinating is that it glows the same aqua blue as the other applied Arabic numerals despite the color. Dimensionally, 36mm across the highly polished stainless steel case, 47.5mm lug-to-lug, and classic Nomos only 8.2mm thin. This is one of the thinnest watches on our list, so not only will it wear small by the diameter alone, especially if you have a modest or larger wrist dimension, but it's really going to hug the wrist as well. You can thank the 2.6mm movement height in large part for this, but more on that in just a sec. A domed sapphire crystal protects that dial we just praised. Its galvanized, silver-plated white backdrop allows the gray Arabic numerals and the pops of red to really stand out, the small seconds at the 6 blending in more than the other elements. There's obvious Bauhaus inspiration, as that's the Nomos calling card. Although the 701.1 does use significantly less color than other notable Nomos examples, we maintain that it's no less fun. For about $1,500, the real value proposition has to be the in-house Alpha Caliber. The in-house caliber, as the name suggests, was the very first in-house creation for Nomos, and has become a classic for the brand. It's a mechanically hand-wound movement, which for that price is really awesome. When the caliber is fully wound, it offers up about 43 hours of power reserve and comes adorned with tempered blue screws, rhodium-plated and glass huta ribbed surfaces and components, and also features Nomos perlage and glass huta sunburst patterns as well. Unfortunately, Nomos doesn't let us see any of this because of the club's solid case back, which is admittedly one of our only critiques of the piece. It's just such a beautiful movement, and as Nomos' first creation, it's a cool Easter egg as well, and an iconic bit of Nomos history that would be rad to see. The leather strap is well built, made with genuine Horween leather and a cordovan brown, and uses red edge stitching all the way around the periphery that boldly matches the red accents of the dial. Our next pick is going to be our next to last pick of the guide as a whole, and our low or budget selection for a small-sized dress watch. It also happens to be the smallest on our list with a diameter of only 34mm, a lug-to-lug just a touch over 40, and a slim 10mm thickness. Timex keeps reissuing hit after hit from their extensive archive, and if you maintain a small wrist size and are looking for a budget dress watch, the Marlin just has a ton of old school swagger. On our wearer's near 8-inch wrist, it might look slightly out of place, but we still tend to like it and we're pleasantly surprised with how well it wore, especially with the thin croc textured leather strap. That being said, anyone with a 7-inch measurement or less should be even more satisfied with the fit. Our second biggest note is the quality of the dial. The Marlin's cream-colored sunburst pattern presentation under the domed acrylic houses elongated mid-century styled applique Arabic numerals every hour with thin markers in between, a trio of sword-shaped hands, and absolutely no dial text, seeing the Timex logo right under the 12. It's just classy. The case itself comes highly polished with the same level everywhere except the case back, which lets us know about the caliber Timex employs for the Marlin's beating heart, which is also a fully hand-wound mechanical one. Another pleasant surprise for a watch with a current $200 sticker tag. Although they don't outwardly advertise it, the movement most likely has origins in China based on Timex's historical use of assembly and components in that locale. But if you properly maintain and operate the movement, there shouldn't be any issues. As it was probably the real deal back in the 60s at the time of the Marlin's original release, this time around Timex uses a more sustainable crocodile textured leather strap to keep the case tethered to the wrist. For the price, it's well finished and will certainly break in with use as it comes out of the box quite stiff, but it looks pretty dashing if we do say so ourselves. Our last small size watch pick, our premium dress watch selection, is none other than the Jaeger-LeCoultre Reverso, a timepiece dating back to 1931 with a reversible case to protect the dial for those of high society who engaged in games of polo and other equestrian sports. And pardon our French, for the rest of the selection we're going to abbreviate the name as to not butcher the pronunciation over and over again, to JLC for short. JLC themselves have roots dating back even further, almost another century older, beginning their operation in Europe's watchmaking heart in Switzerland circa 1833. Knowing the watchmaker for the prestige and elegance of what they offer now, it's quite difficult to imagine that its founder first ran the business out of his family's barn. A true "we started in a humble garage" story, just like a good deal of modern tech giants that we have today. Anyway, the Reverso is an Art Deco masterpiece, truly one of the most archetypal contributions to the horological lexicon. It has housed over 50 different calibers and has seen dozens of different dial styles, case sizes, case materials, and tribute editions all the same. But one through line remained. In each case, the case itself rotates and can be reversed to hide the dial and wear with the adorned or unadorned, as is the case with this classic edition case back facing up. Today, our pick is one of the most traditional, the Reverso Tribute Monoface Small Seconds. Since there are many references in the JLC historical catalog, here's the exact reference number, Q713842J. And apologies if you're already familiar with this next terminology, but the Reverso is a tank-style watch. It's a shape credited to Cartier with the creation of, well, the tank, circa 1917, and it was modeled after a famous French tank used during the First World War. Boiling it way down, they're identifiable by that iconic rectangular shape. This specific Reverso uses a tank case spanning 27.4mm in diameter by 45.6mm lug-to-lug with an overall 8.51mm thickness. The stainless steel case with its iconic horizontal dragoons comes fully polished everywhere you look, including the case back. Now, here's the gist. Slide the case to the left to reveal the dial and snap gently to lock into place. The top of the inner case uses what you could say is a detent or a small inset ball bearing to gently hold the flippable part of the case in its place. Then, if you would like to hide the dial, in other words dial side face down, slide to the right and flip, or the reverse operation. The whole slide and swivel process is easy and smooth to operate for the user, but it's actually a construct of more than 50 components to make it so seamless. With this specific Reverso, rotating the case reveals both a mirror-polished case back and a case housing imprinted with a bold sunray pattern as well. Under the flat crystal, the traditional Reverso dial houses a small seconds at the 6, a crisp white opaline dial background, a thin squared-off railroad-style minute track along the periphery, and a Dauphine handset at the center that ticks past sharp tapered markers, each of which are set with polished black nickel. As much as we love the Reverso for its novel mechanism, elegant styling, and historic nature, it's one hell of a fingerprint magnet with its completely polished nature. Of course, as a dress watch, you want to keep your best foot forward when wearing it, so this can start to get annoying. Keeping a microfiber on your person could be an idea, especially if you're going to rock a Reverso as an everyday wear piece. Inside, the JLC manufactured caliber 822 is a fully hand-wound mechanical, highly adorned movement with 108 components that you can't see at all, unfortunately. But JLC does have a few photographs on their site if you're interested in checking out its construction. Practically though, JLC recommends giving it a wind around the same time every day to ensure the accuracy of its timekeeping, but you do get a 42-hour power reserve if you forget occasionally. Technically, the 822 isn't the most accurate movement with a 3Hz beat rate, which yes, is slightly disappointing for the price point just north of 10 grand, but at the end of the day, you're not just paying for the movement, you're paying to wear a JLC Reverso. It's a highly recognizable on the wrist piece, and certainly signals you can appreciate the craftsmanship and history of such a caliber of watch. Keeping our Reverso Tribute Small Seconds tethered to the wrist is an 18mm black bi-material leather and canvas strap, ending with a JLC branded double folding buckle. But of course, the Reverso looks absolutely fantastic paired with a leather strap as well, which JLC offers up in spades. For a truly dressy air, we'd recommend a black calfskin leather version to pair with a clean white dial. And with that, the end of our guide. As always, thank you for sticking with us to the end of our guide highlighting a roundup of some of the best small size watches for men. In the past 5 years or so, there's been a surge in modern watchmakers offering up vintage, we say with air quotes, case sizes, which typically ran smaller yesteryear. So this selection is by no means completely comprehensive. There are many other great watches with small cases offered at both budget and premium price points alike that we didn't have time to include. So as always, definitely drop us a line below with your specific favorites, and be sure to check out our editorial guide as well.